Cancer, welcome to your reading. This is going to be your Geoscope for the upcoming solar eclipse in your sign, Cancer, on the 21st of June 2020. So let's get those cards shuffled. So just to say that I am going to be doing some personalized horoscopes for each of the 12 zodiac signs on my website. So if that is something that you are interested in, then do go and subscribe to my newsletter. It's free. Just go to astrologysphere.com/subscribe and just fill in the form. This is going to be your geomancy geoscope, which I quite enjoy because it kind of dovetails and complements the astrology quite nicely. It allows us to get a little bit more into sort of more pragmatic or mundane details about the types of issues in the sort of 3D world that are likely to be activated by this particular 6-month cycle. So let's see what the elementals want to tell us. What do they want to highlight? This is unbelievable. Almost every single reading that I've done has started with Laitisha in the first house, and you can see that I do shuffle the cards and I shuffle in between readings as well. I clear with a quartz crystal. So there's obviously a very clear message for the collective across the board, which is that one of the purposes of this particular 6-month cycle that is started at the 6 months at the eclipse is the sort of pursuit of happiness, following your bliss. So yes, really, really interesting. Okay, next up we've got Cancer. Now this is your 4th house, which is a Cancer sort of ruled house. It's traditionally associated with Cancerian types of issues. So this is your home, it's family, it's where you feel you belong. It can also be your bloodlines, so things you inherit via your ancestors, which could be, you know, health conditions, but they could also be talents or gifts, or property, because this is also the house of home and you know, and traditionally sort of where you live. So Cancer here is Saturn in Capricorn, which is almost the opposite energy. So this is about restrictions or limitations imposed on your home or your work or your family environment. Now, of course, this could be literal. It could be lockdown, for example. But on the other hand, it could also be some kind of restriction in terms of perhaps your home is feeling a little bit too small, a bit too restricted. It's very difficult to sort of live and work, you know, in that space. So maybe there's a sort of desire within you to expand or find something a little bit bigger, or maybe relocate, or it could be circumstances. It could be that you would like to you know, to move somewhere else, but at the moment circumstances are prohibiting you from either traveling, relocating. You know, maybe finances are a little bit tight, so you can't really afford the property that you want, the property of your dreams. But in some sense there is limitations. The kind of positive aspect of this particular card is that it's also about internal limitations in the sense of self-discipline. And sometimes this is what is required in order to really sort of manifest something, is this sense of, you know, consistency and cutting out distractions or energy leakage, or, you know, so just helping us to focus and helping us to be as productive as possible. So that could also be another way that this works. You know, for example, it may be that you want to reduce your carbon footprint in your home. Then, you know, having Cancer here is a really positive geomantic figure to have. Or you may decide you want to downsize, for example, if you are close to retirement. So in that sense, you know, Saturn in Capricorn is really the sign of old age and of our kind of senior years. So, you know, then again, this particular geomantic figure would be quite positive. So it can kind of work either way. Interesting. So this is your 7th house of partnerships, and it's usually one-to-one commitments or marriages, or, for example, a business partnership. So it's usually important and long-term, ongoing, committed relationships, whether through a contract or through a contract. I mean, if you get married, it's also you sign a contract. So here we've got Counter Draconis, which is the head of the dragon. So, I mean, sorry, the tail of the dragon. So this is the south node, the south lunar node, which is actually more kind of it has more resonances with lunar eclipses as opposed to solar eclipses, because lunar eclipses happen at full moons, and so they tend to be about culminations or endings. So Cauda Draconis is implying that there is something that is leaving your reality, perhaps a person who's leaving your reality, perhaps a relationship is over, maybe a long-term financial partnership, for example, or a business partnership. But something is sort of leaving, and you could see this as a need to release something in order for something else to come in. So it may be, for example, that you've been, for example, locked up with a spouse or a partner, and you've kind of realized that this relationship has sort of reached its sell-by date, and that this is kind of blocking your ability to be happy because you're not making each other happy. That in some way you are kind of like restricting each other's growth, or it could be something along those lines, but it could also equally be, as I say, a business partnership. So, but it means the end of a karmic cycle. So that's just something to bear in mind. Interesting. So in the 10th house, we've got conjunctio. Now, this is the geomantic symbol associated with marriage. So this is about kind of the union of opposites. And of course, at a full moon, at a new moon, we have the sun and the moon coming together in one particular degree or sign of the zodiac, in this case Cancer, your sign, and sort of combining energies. So it's interesting that we've got this union energy in your 10th house, which kind of suggests, given that we've got family relationships here, and we've got one-to-one partnerships, that maybe for you're kind of married to your career, and that is what brings you happiness, as opposed to your familial relationships, or your current partnership. It could be that on some level, this family relationships tend to be quite abusive or draining or restrictive in some way, and so you really want to kind of put all your focus into your career, or your sole purpose. And conjunctio is quite a positive card. It's neutral, but it is Mercury in the sign of Virgo, which is where Mercury is exalted. So it's very precise energy. It's earthy, but it's precise energy, and it's kind of about getting very clear about what it is that you want, your direction in life, the way you want to move forward in the future, and this may involve kind of bringing two aspects of your life together. So that may be significant, this idea of union. I'm just quickly going to read you some of the keywords, because they may spark something off, kind of in you. So keywords for conjunctio are union of opposites, balance, conjunction, alliance, collaboration, combined efforts, interaction, marriages, and the recovery of things lost. So the image for this is two triangles in opposite facing directions with their points touching. So it's almost the opposite of the Star of David, where you have kind of above and below sort of overlapping each other. You've got instead the 2 points touching, and then these sort of bases facing away from each other. So that image may be significant to you. In terms of elements, we've got water here, we've got earth in your 4th house. Cauda Draconis, I'm not sure about element actually. It might be earth. Fire apparently. Interesting, I would have thought it was earth, but apparently that is Cauda Draconis. So it's fire, so I guess it's burning away what is no longer serving you. And then we've got earth again here. So we're missing, what are we missing? What water? So we're missing air. So let's see where air kind of comes in to sort of balance things, when we do the geomantic conversions. But I'm just going to pause for a minute while I do those conversions, and I'll be back shortly. Hi Cancer, welcome back to your reading. So as you can see, I have worked out all the geomantic figures, and I have popped them into their respective houses. So this, just kind of a heads up, this is very similar to horary astrology, in the sense that we have the astrological chart here with all 12 houses, and each of the figures represents a planetary and a sign placement. So it's a kind of simplified version of astrology, but I like it because there's an element of chance in it, like the I Ching or the tarot cards. So I think it's, in that sense, it allows spirit to speak to us a little bit more clearly. So I've laid out your cards, and let's kind of dive in to see what they are trying to tell us in terms of a message for the themes of the upcoming 6-month cycle that starts with this eclipse in your sign. So as I said, this eclipse, the sun and the moon will be in Cancer, which is in your first house, and this represents your desire to follow your bliss, to pursue happiness. No doubt, because of lockdown, which has given a lot of us pause to think about things and realize what it is that we want, what it is we don't want. So there is some releasing to do over the next 6 months. Possibly it can be the way that we relate to other people, it can be a particular relationship, and then coming together. So getting really clear about what needs to come together in order for you to move forward in your life, whether it's with your soul purpose, whether it is with your career, or simply just in terms of moving forward into the future. So yes, first house is always really important, and then what I like to do is I like to look for repetitions of figures, because they can give us a bit more information. So Laitisha is repeated in your third house, which is the house of communication, self-expression, as well as your immediate environment. So this can be teaching and learning, particularly at school level, but it could also be your neighborhood. So it could be to do with neighbors, with siblings or close relatives. It could be somebody that you encounter on your commute to work, for example. It could be your children's teacher that you sort of see when you drop off the kids every day. But it's generally people that are kind of part of our immediate environment, or, as I say, the way that we think or express ourselves. So it's possible now that maybe a change of scene will help you to get a little bit happier, given that we've got these restrictions in your fourth house of home. Possibly it's time to sort of move house, move home, or it could be that you just need to kind of switch up your perspective on what you have, and maybe that will allow some gratitude to flood in, and that could make you happier. Or it could simply be a different way of communicating your needs that ensures that they are met, and doesn't meet with kind of resistance or resentment. So those are some of the issues that I think are being highlighted, or third house issues. Now, I find it fascinating that at this eclipse we're going to have Mercury in your sign in Cancer, and Mercury is going to be retrograde, and Mercury will be retrograde until the 12th of July, I think. So it's going to kind of color, it's going to add another layer of energy or meaning to this particular eclipse energy. And given that it's happening in your first house, and close to in your sign, and close to the fixed star Sirius, I think it's possible that in some way, it's kind of highlighting the issue of communication and thought again, with the third house, because Mercury is naturally the sort of third house kind of ruler, almost in a way. There's a strong overlap with Gemini here. So I think it's interesting that we've got this emphasis on Mercury. And so, as I say, Mercury will be making conjunction to the fixed star Sirius, and Sirius is the brightest star in our particular galaxy. So in theosophy, it has come to be associated with what they call the central sun, the kind of Sophia. But it traditionally, if we talk about mythology, probably the myth that is most well known in relation to Sirius, which is the dog star. So it can be about loyalty, for example, but generally speaking, we tend to refer to the Egyptian kind of myths here, and Sirius is very closely associated with the goddess Isis, the mother goddess, because the sun would rise and make a conjunction, in the constellation of Cancer, which is where we find Sirius currently, in the Western tropical zodiac. So the sun would rise in Cancer at the summer solstice, and with it would come the inundation of the Nile, which brought fertility and abundance back to the the desert sand, so people could kind of grow things again. And so this was very much associated with this return of the kind of mother goddess, the Isis energy. So there may be some overlaps here with that particular myth, given the sort of the link to Mercury in relation to your third house. So it could be, as I say, just pivoting your thinking so that you think more in terms of abundance, or whether it is that you need to give yourself a little bit more self-care, be kinder to yourself in terms of your self-talk, for example. There may just be something there about Mercury retrograde in Cancer. So that's one thing to consider. Then the other thing that we need to sort of look at is where the sort of the outcome of the reading is Fortuna Major, which is super positive and happens to be quite solar in nature. So this is naturally associated with the sun in Leo, and it's possible that Leo is the sign that follows on from Cancer. It's also about it's very solar, and of course an eclipse is where the sun and the moon are kind of coming together. So there is this lunar aspect, which is the sun in the moon in Cancer, and then there is the solar aspect, which is the sun in its natural sort of domicile of Leo. So it's possible that the next 2 months are going to be really important, and that great progress and success could be coming your way during this particular time period. Now, if we want to kind of get a handle on this, it's good to look again at where this geomantic figure is repeated, and we've got it here in the 8th house as well as the 5th house. So the 5th house is to do with children as well as creativity. It can be new love affairs, so this is kind of what we are passionate about, or what brings us joy. So it seems to be kind of saying that if you want to follow your bliss, you need to reintroduce joy back into your life, and that this will have a kind of knock-on effect, a kind of this amplifying effect of actually also bringing you success. So it may be worth reigniting a hobby that maybe something that brought you a lot of pleasure in the past and you haven't really pursued it lately. Perhaps you've been too busy. Or it could be spending time with your children and sort of getting into a more playful kind of frame of mind, or taking a holiday. Now, of course, this is a bit tricky at the moment with lockdown, but the restrictions are easing, so it may be that you're kind of able to get away even just for a couple of days. So that's one area that could bring you enormous abundance. Then the second one is the 8th house. Now, this is shared resources, usually with one other person. So it's usually either assets that you co-own with a marriage partner, a spouse, or it could be assets that you co-own with a financial partner or a business partner. So that's why there's this link to the 7th house. It can also be ephemeral things such as trust, intimacy, sharing secrets, that kind of thing. So somehow this is also a key to your success, or to feeling abundant and to sort of attracting abundance to you. You might want to just think about that a little bit, given that we've got this Cauda Draconis, this end of a karmic cycle, this release of something. It could be, as I say, a pattern of relating, perhaps where you are mistrustful, and maybe through doing some work around this, some energy release work on blocks, for example, or couples therapy, or some kind of counseling, that you are able to move into a much more kind of abundant frame of mind, where there is more of a natural give and take between two people, for example. So that's just something to bear in mind. But as I say, it may also be that Leo season will be important for you, so just keep that in mind in terms of timing. I'm just going to read you the keywords for Fortuna Major. So this is to do with great fortune, good luck, serendipity, power, effortless success, social mobility, a winning disposition, victory, inner strength, and natural charisma. So, it's interesting that this is about not necessarily physical gold, but about, fool's gold in the sort of alchemical terms. This is about, inner gold. So, really about feeling like a winner, feeling like you deserve success, feeling, that you are worthy of all the things that you wish for in your life. And it's interesting that we've got a repeat of Cauda Draconis in your second house. Now this is the house of not just possessions and income, but also of self-worth. So it's interesting that we've got this in relation to the seventh house. We've got the same geomantic symbol in both. So it is possible that, you know, your relationship issue may be linked to self-worth. Could also be linked to money, of course. This could be some kind of business contract, and perhaps by getting out of it you come into more money, because perhaps whatever this agreement is has not been to your benefit as far as finances or income was concerned. So that's something to bear in mind, you know, kind of going forward. But it's interesting in relation to this third house that, you know, this Lightisha, that you know, very often the way that we talk to ourselves has to do with how we value ourselves and how we express ourselves, and you know, feel that we are worthy of having our needs met, has to do with our self-worth, where we feel that we are worthy of receiving. So there may well be some overlap here with this karmic cycle that is ending. It may be that on some level you are moving away from negative self-talk or just feelings of worthlessness. It may be something that you've been working on long term, perhaps since the last solar eclipse in Cancer, which happened back in July of 2019. So, you know, this could just be the sort of remnants of this that, you know, finally has to be released. So overall then, if we look at your three cards, you know, for your sort of your outcome, we've got Corsair repeated. So this is, you know, repeated in your fourth house. So it may be that there are some having to come to terms with certain restrictions within the home or family environment, but also, you know, potentially seeing these as a positive, you know, allowing them to focus your mind and your attention on what you really want. Then we've got Amisio. Now Amisio is Venus in Taurus, and it's interesting because this is usually about loss on some level, and you know, we've got this theme of release, so it could well be sort of realizing you know, something has to go, and perhaps mourning it, but also realizing that it's essential in order for you to continue growing. So Amisio is about transience, loss, breakups, separations, what is unattainable or just out of reach. It's also to reject, leave, decline, lose or be stranded. It can be to do with self-destructiveness as well as theft and financial ruin. So we did have a kind of an intimation of this with the 8th house and the 2nd house being highlighted for you. So it is possible that you are getting out of some sort of arrangement that has caused loss, financial loss, theft or financial ruin. It could be that you found out that, for example, that your accountant was sort of creaming money off the top or cooking the books, and you are getting out of that arrangement now. It could also be that a marriage was proving to be financially draining because, you know, one member of the domestic sort of setup wasn't pulling their weight, for example. Maybe they, you know, they've been not been, you know, kind of fulfilling their financial obligations, but equally it could be that you're just simply realizing that something has reached its sell-by date and that it's time to move on. And you know, that is not always an easy process. Even though we realize that something needs to end, it doesn't mean that we don't grieve or kind of feel the loss, and that just has to be kind of worked through, because the gift at the end of all of this is certainly you know, something worth striving for, this Fortuna Major, one of the most positive of the geomantic figures. And as I say, it does look as though by aligning yourself with the right people, you stand to gain a lot through shared resources. So that's, I think, a really positive message, Cancer. I hope that you found this reading helpful. I'd love to hear your feedback. If it's resonated, do hit the like button and subscribe, because I am going to be doing these readings for every upcoming moon phase. And again, if you're interested in my personalized video horoscopes, then go to astrologysphere.com/subscribe and just sign up for my newsletter. But anyway, I'm wishing you all the best for the upcoming solar eclipse and the solstice, and I'll catch you again for my reading for the lunar eclipse in Capricorn in a couple of weeks.